Jessica, you're in charge of the family dinner tomorrow. Housework and child-rearing have always been the wife's job. I work to support us, so no complaining, okay? Tawny, my husband, said this with a sickening grin as he dumped the responsibility of raising their twins on me. Raising twins was already a handful, yet there was a dinner for 15 relatives. And he was leaving it all to me. I work, so everything else is your job as the wife. That had become a common refrain from her husband. He had no idea how hard it was to care for 5-month-old twins. But that wasn't the only thing he was clueless about. Facing his creepy smile, I replied as if to confirm. The family dinner tomorrow? What are you talking about? The relatives are coming today. Huh? What are you on about? The family dinner is definitely tomorrow. Stop talking nonsense and start preparing now. I'm heading out. Going out again today? Must be nice to have such leisure, as if you have a millisecond to spare. Right after, I felt a violent shock that made her whole body tremble and fell to the floor. He had kicked her in the stomach. Her phone also dropped to the floor with a thud, and as she scrambled to pick it up, her husband, looking demonic, blocked her way. Hey, what are you thinking, kicking me all of a sudden? It's lucky the baby wasn't close by, but think a little more, will you? It's your fault, Jessica. You talked back to me. You should just be grateful and listen to me. I'll say it again, stop spouting nonsense and get ready for the dinner. Despite the shock of being kicked and the exhaustion from sleepless nights of childcare, her resolve was clear. I had to make this man regret it for life. Besides, he told her to prepare, but she had already done so. He would be the one receiving the ultimate hospitality. Just watch. I would make him understand, thoroughly. As I thought this, he headed towards the front door, but just then, the doorbell rang perfectly on cue. With an annoyed expression, he answered the intercom, which quickly turned to surprise. Because there, on the screen, were his in-laws and relatives. Just as I had said, the relatives had arrived today. Sensing something was happening behind his back, he turned to me and threw a sharp glance. When I remained silent, not reacting to his stare, he muttered, "The family dinner is supposed to be tomorrow," and slowly opened the door, only to be met with an even bigger surprise. Behind his parents-in-law stood all 15 relatives, their faces red with anger. There were relatives who hadn't planned on attending the dinner, so his confusion only grew. What's going on, everyone? Isn't the dinner tomorrow? Why the angry faces? Did something happen? Did something happen, you say? I see, you haven't heard anything yet. Haven't heard what? Anyway, I'm about to leave, so if there's something, talk to Jessica about it. No, you're not going anywhere. Let's continue this inside. Ignoring his words, the relatives started entering the house one after another. He seemed unable to confront his relatives, watching them with a flustered look, but eventually, he sighed, closed the door, and returned inside. He still couldn't grasp the situation, but he seemed to sense the ominous atmosphere, showing a scared expression that he normally never would. Is everyone ready? Then, let's begin. Tawny, sit down in front of us. What? Sit down? Why? Like I said, I have things to do after this. Just sit down, now. Hurry up. He didn't understand at all, but Tawny, unable to stand up to his in-laws, begrudgingly sat down while muttering complaints. At the same time, all 15 relatives formed a circle around him, creating a sense of no escape, and his expression darkened further. Having confirmed his expression, I, along with the in-laws and relatives, focused our gaze on him as we exchanged nods. Listen, Tawny. Answer my questions honestly, without any deceit, okay? Why the sudden visit and all these questions? You're scaring me. I don't need such a warning, I don't lie to anyone. You said it, don't forget what you just said. So, first question, how's work going? I've landed a big contract recently. I'm being recognized at the office. I see. Second question then. How are the twins doing? No problems at all. They're growing up well. I see. Now the last question. How is your marriage with Jessica? No issues there either. Jessica safely delivered the twins and is perfect with housework and childcare. She's a good wife, supporting her husband. The moment he finished speaking, he looked around and noticed something was off. This Q&A had made the relatives' faces even more stern, glaring at him with icy stares. Tawny, I want to confirm one more time. Did you answer my questions truthfully? Yes, I haven't lied at all. What's this about? I don't understand. His tone grew firmer, perhaps due to the repetition. But then, the father-in-law raised his voice even more. Don't play dumb. Everything you're saying is full of lies. Tawny became flustered under the father-in-law's fierce demeanor. Ignoring Tawny, the father-in-law looked at him with a piercing gaze, full of conviction. Tawny, you've been bullying Jessica, haven't you? We all know about it now. Huh? Bullying Jessica? On what basis? Are you saying that's why you asked those questions? Gathering everyone here just for that. I'm not bullying her. That's impossible, right, Jessica? Tawny turned to me, his eyes pleading not to say anything unnecessary. The old me would have been too scared of my husband to do anything. But if I continued to obey him, not only would I be miserable, but so would our relatives, and most importantly, our children. I realized I had to change, and with firm resolve, I began to reveal everything. Tawny, lying is useless because, as your father said, we all know. We know how you've been pushing child-rearing onto me, verbally abusing me, and neglecting the family. What are you talking about, Jessica? There's no way I would do such a thing. Correct it now. You're confusing the relatives. The relatives are confused about your true nature. You've been playing the good husband all along, haven't you? Just to avoid their suspicion. My true nature? What are you talking about? Surely, everyone isn't taking what Jessica is saying seriously, right? Tawny appealed to the relatives again while looking around, but their expressions only grew more stern. He was the only one who didn't understand why this was happening. On the contrary, we all knew everything. To make him understand, the father-in-law spoke up. Haven't you thought about why we are all gathered here? Are you still planning to lie after hearing this? Pulling out his smartphone, the father-in-law asked Tawny while playing an audio recording. Jessica, you're in charge of the family dinner tomorrow, too. Housework and child-rearing have always been the wife's job. I work to support us, so no complaining, okay? Tawny's words to me earlier echoed clearly from the smartphone. His mouth agape, he looked around in disbelief. When he had kicked me, I had my smartphone with me, recording the incident. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment action, but a result of consistently recording to gather evidence of his bullying. Meaning, there wasn't just one recording. All of them had been sent to the relatives, so the father-in-law played another audio clip. Just a housewife and yet you serve this terrible food? Make it again, fast. If you defy me, we can just get a divorce, right? You'd be the one in trouble, wouldn't you? Tawny's vile words filled the room, silencing everyone. In contrast, Tawny began to panic and started to rant. Jessica, you. Don't mess with me. Like I said before, lying is pointless. Everyone is here today because I sent them the evidence of the bullying all at once. Finally grasping the situation, Tawny was trembling and his face turned pale. Meanwhile, the relatives' anger became even more apparent, each with deep furrows between their brows. In the tense atmosphere, the father-in-law stepped closer to Tawny. Tawny, you seem to finally understand the situation, huh? Now, tell us everything. Why have you been so harsh on Jessica? From what we've seen, there's no reason for Jessica to be treated like this. What's going on? Tell us. Tawny looked thoughtful, as if searching for an escape route. A sign that he was still only thinking of himself. Unaware of my contemptuous stance, he took a deep breath and nervously began to speak to the father-in-law. It's the job. Actually, things haven't been going well at work. I didn't secure any big contract. In fact, I haven't been achieving anything significant. It's been a growing pressure and mentally draining. I couldn't say anything because I didn't want to let everyone down. Tawny choked up as he spoke of his troubles. He had secured a position at a well-respected company, held in high regard by our relatives. From childhood, through his school years, he worked diligently and never complained, according to what the in-laws and relatives said. I started dating him after I began working, and back then, he was serious, kind, and cherished his family. But 3 years into our marriage, Tawny changed. Yet, he continued to act the same around the relatives, so no one noticed until now. There were times before, even before we were married, when work didn't go well. I kept telling myself I needed to work harder, but I just couldn't get any results. It had nothing to do with Jessica, but I took out my frustrations on her. It was my way of venting. I'm the worst. I'm really sorry. So all those times you visited Jessica in the hospital, it was just to deceive us. Tawny did not refute the father-in-law's words. That meant he was admitting to it. His visits were just to play the good husband, probably not caring about me or our children at all. When I gave him a look of disdain, Tawny sheepishly looked down and then started apologizing profusely, bowing deeply to the floor.
Jessica, forgive me. I'll change my ways right this moment. I'll be reborn. Can you give me another chance?
Tawny's face was earnest, filled with true remorse and a desire to make amends. But in the next moment, I couldn't help but laugh. The relatives around us were all appalled, some sighing deeply, others shaking their heads or making gestures of disbelief. If they had known nothing, maybe someone would have forgiven him. But that was only if they knew nothing. Tawny noticed the odd reactions and was puzzled, not understanding why I was laughing or why everyone was so appalled, furrowing his brow in confusion. That's when I decided to give him the answer, an important one for my revenge.
The thing is, I didn't just send evidence of the bullying to our relatives. Look at this, I sent this to everyone as well.
Showing the smartphone screen to Tawny, his face drained of color as fast as the sound could escape. On the screen was a photo of a smitten Tawny with a young, beautiful woman. Jessica, what is this? When did you? And you sent it to all the relatives. Really? Yes, really. Along with the evidence of your bullying, I also sent photos of your affair. She's quite a beautiful nurse, isn't she? I thought she was a model or an actress at first. Tawny had apologized to me and the relatives while hiding the fact of his affair, claiming he wanted to change. I laughed at the pathetic nature of such a man. The relatives, aware of the situation, were naturally appalled. You intended to keep denying it if we said nothing, didn't you? How foolish can you get? Pretending to visit but actually cheating with a nurse. It wasn't about deceiving us, your goal was the affair. How could you cheat while Jessica was about to give birth? The relatives, like the in-laws, expressed their grief and anger. Tawny, who kept piling lies upon lies, looked utterly ridiculous and beyond redemption. Desperately searching for excuses, he seemed not to have imagined that I knew about the affair, unable to find any excuse that could save him in this situation, his eyes darting around. So, Tawny, you had plans to go out today, but it was to meet your affair partner, right? No, that's not it. It's a misunderstanding, Jessica. Just talking to her at the hospital. Being suspected over that. Besides, just a photo on the phone isn't conclusive evidence.
Really? Just talking at the hospital, huh? I've known about your affair since before I was hospitalized. When I started wondering why you changed, it all became clear. And by the way, the evidence of your affair isn't just in the phone's photos. I hired a detective, so I have plenty of proof. I handed Tawny an envelope that I had prepared in advance, and with trembling hands, he pulled out its contents. There were loads of photographs from the investigation report, showing him in the act of cheating. I chose the hospital where your affair partner works as part of the plan.
You cheated openly, not knowing anything. It's unbelievable.
You chose the hospital just to keep an eye on me? That's going too far. Why would you go to such lengths?
You did something terrible, Tawny.
It's not just because of work pressure or stress, right? You were planning to make me miserable and drive me to divorce, weren't you? How can you do such a thing after having children? That's not something a decent person would do.
The relatives surrounding us nodded in agreement with sorrowful expressions. The mother-in-law finally broke down crying, and the father-in-law hurried to comfort her. Even Tawny seemed shaken by his mother's tears, visibly panicked. Observing this, the father-in-law glared at Tawny fiercely while consoling his wife. The only path left for Tawny was to tell the truth, apologize, and take responsibility. Yet, even here, he was only thinking of himself.
I admit to the affair. But it was just a moment of weakness. It's normal for a man to have an affair once or twice, right? You all understand, don't you? The only person I truly love is Jessica, understand?
In a desperate attempt to douse the fire, Tawny was essentially tightening the noose around his own neck. Such foolishness. But I also regret not realizing his true nature sooner and continuing our marriage. I was wrong to only see the surface-level image of him. However, the most important consideration should be the children. They might need a father, but the man in front of me cannot be that father.
What I can't forgive the most is how you neglected the children. I want Tawny to live with regret and reflection for the rest of his life. That's my wish. Along with the divorce, I'll be seeking alimony and child support, and I will report everything about Tawny to his company.
Tawny, we wanted to believe in you.
But in the end, you piled up lies and excuses. Do you think it's okay to do anything as long as you're fine? We are profoundly disappointed. Never cross our doorstep again. Don't even think about running away anymore.
We are all watching you, Tawny. At that moment, Tawny froze as if time had stopped for him. He might have imagined the divorce, alimony, child support, and the report to his company, but being disowned by the relatives was probably beyond his expectation. He thought the relatives would always be his allies. That belief was his last fortress, the reason he continued to play the good husband. He thought he could manipulate me with excuses and lies as long as he had the relatives on his side. However, the one true thing Tawny always had was his desire to meet the relatives' expectations. Just as they gathered today for me, the in-laws and relatives are kind people who act for others. Tawny, having grown up with them, should understand this better than anyone. His efforts to live up to their expectations were genuine. But that's why I wished he hadn't betrayed them like this. It's too late for amends, but still, Tawny needs to reflect and regret. Disowned even by the in-laws, he finally became subdued. His chattering teeth and trembling figure were probably signs that he finally understood the gravity of the situation. Wait, Jessica, we're still married, right? I was wrong, so please reconsider the divorce. Dad, Mom, please don't disown me. We're family, aren't we? Parents are supposed to care about their children, right?
Parents are supposed to care about their children, huh? Tawny, ask yourself. Who neglected their newborn children? Don't use your family as a convenient excuse.
You also said this to Jessica, right?
That housework and child-rearing are the wife's job, and since you provide, she shouldn't complain. Can you call that a marriage? You need time to face yourself. Otherwise, you won't be able to lead a decent life from now on.
Tawny fell silent with a grimace, looking around with pleading eyes, but everyone present could not forgive or accept his foolish actions. Their gazes were cold and filled with sorrow, yet there seemed to be a hint of kindness, as if they wished Tawny would realize his mistakes. I shouldn't have had an affair. I should have cherished Jessica more, the family more. What have I done? After witnessing Tawny's words of regret, one by one, the relatives began to leave. Tawny weakly reached out, but no one took his hand, and even the in-laws left the house. I told Tawny I was going back to my parents' house with the twins and headed for the door, leaving him behind. Left alone, Tawny could only mutter words of apology to no one in particular. Afterward, I proceeded with the divorce through a lawyer, seeking as much alimony and child support as possible, determined to ensure payment. Although adultery is a private matter and he wasn't fired from his job, the rumors quickly spread within the company, and my ex-husband, mentally shattered, ended up leaving. However, he still needed to pay alimony and child support, so he reluctantly turned to his affair partner. But then, something unexpected happened to him again. In a desperate state, my ex-husband called me. "Jessica, do you know anything? I can't reach Remy, my affair partner." "Oh, Remy? Maybe she's with her husband? It seems it was just a fling. Looks like you were conveniently used." My ex-husband was so shocked he couldn't respond for a while. It turned out his affair partner was married, and he was unaware, even considering marriage with her. Ultimately, his motive for the affair was simple: he wanted to remarry a younger, beautiful woman. Ironically, my ex-husband, who thought he was manipulating me, was himself deceived by his affair partner. Truly beyond redemption. Well, Tawny, isn't that good for you? You have nothing left to lose now. It's always been clear, if you do something bad, you have to face the consequences. So, don't call me again, okay? After hanging up, I received continuous messages from him, so I quietly blocked his contact, severing all ties completely. Later, I heard about my ex-husband's whereabouts through the in-laws. He was driven into a corner, unable to properly look for a job, living in a shabby apartment, and doing day labor just to pay off his debts. Meanwhile, back at my parents' house, I was raising the twins with their support. It was overwhelmingly busy, but seeing my children grow up healthy and happy gave me new energy. Years later, I remarried, and now I'm living happily with my new family. Of course, not everything is smooth sailing, and there will be challenges ahead. But it makes me think again. Being able to share joy, sorrow, and hardship is what being a couple and a family is all about.